The palace of the alien queen stood like a mountain of silver stone. Its towers reached the sky, and its walls glowed under the light of twin suns. Inside, the great hall stretched wider than any human stadium. The floor was carved from black crystal, and tall banners of gold and green hung from every side. At the center of this hall stood something no one dared to touch. It was the queen's sacred armor. The armor was not only a symbol of strength but also of unity. Long ago, a warrior of her people had worn it to protect the weak and bring peace between clans. Since then, it was kept in the hall, guarded by silence and fear. Every alien in the palace believed the armor carried power. To touch it without permission was seen as a crime against their history. On this day, the hall was filled with nobles, guards, and council members. They gathered to prepare for a great meeting. Hundreds of tall figures with silver skin and glowing eyes stood in rows. Their armor shined, and their voices were low as they spoke about politics, trade, and war. The air was heavy with pride and tension. None dared to make loud noise in the presence of the sacred object. Among all these beings was one who did not belong. His name was Tom, a human visitor. He had been invited by the queen herself for reasons no alien fully understood. Many of the nobles looked at him with cold stares. To them, he was small, fragile, and unworthy of standing in such a place. Yet the queen had allowed him, and her word was law. Tom walked slowly through the hall, keeping his eyes wide as he took in the grand pillars and the glowing floor. He had never seen such beauty. The aliens around him whispered, some mocking, some warning. He tried to ignore them. His heart was full of curiosity, and his steps were light. Then his eyes fell on the armor. It stood tall on a pedestal of crystal. The chest plate was silver with lines of deep blue, and strange runes glowed faintly along its edges. The helmet rested above, its faceplate shaped like the wings of a bird. The gauntlets and boots looked heavy, yet elegant, as if made not just for battle but for honor. Tom could not look away. He walked closer, his feet echoing on the floor. A few guards frowned and shifted their stance. They did not stop him, for no rule said a guest could not look. But every eye followed him. To them, it was unthinkable that a human would even dare to approach so near. Tom stopped in front of the pedestal. The armor seemed alive in the quiet hall. He felt a strange warmth in the air around it, as if it carried the memory of battles and voices of the past. Without thinking, he reached out his hand. His fingers brushed against the smooth silver of the chest plate. Gasps filled the hall. Dozens of nobles turned sharply, eyes wide in shock. Guards tightened their grip on weapons. Whispers ran through the air like a storm. No one had ever touched the armor. Not even high lords, not even generals. And now, a human had done what none dared. Tom pulled back his hand, realizing too late what he had done. His heart beat faster. He looked around and saw every alien staring at him with disbelief. Some looked ready to strike. Others looked afraid. But before any could move, the sound of drums rolled across the hall. The tall doors at the far end began to open. The great banners shook with the movement, and a cold wind entered with the sound of steps. The queen was arriving. Her entrance silenced the room. She was taller than most of her people, her silver skin glowing brighter, her long crown of crystal shining in the light. Her eyes carried fire, and her voice, when she spoke, seemed to come from every wall. "Who touched my armor?" she said, and the words shook the hall. The nobles froze. Not a single one answered. Every guard lowered their gaze. Silence spread, heavy and fearful. None wanted to speak. None wanted to carry the weight of such an action. Tom felt his throat tighten. He knew every gaze would soon turn to him. His mind told him to hide, to stay silent, to hope someone else would take the blame. But his heart beat stronger, and he knew the truth could not stay hidden. He stepped forward. His small figure looked fragile under the eyes of hundreds. He looked up at the Queen. His voice was quiet but clear. "I did," he said. The hall gasped again. Whispers burst louder. Some shouted in anger, demanding his punishment. Others shook their heads in disbelief. No one could understand why a human would admit such a thing. The Queen's eyes fixed on him. She did not move. Her face was calm, unreadable. But her presence was heavy, pressing on every soul in the room. Tom stood still, his hands at his side, his heart pounding. For a long moment, there was silence again. Only the sound of the Queen's steps echoed as she walked slowly toward him. Each step rang like thunder, and the nobles moved aside to give her space. She stopped before him, tall and powerful, her eyes glowing with cold fire. The hall waited. Everyone held their breath. The Queen spoke once more, her voice softer but still sharp as steel. "Why?" she asked. The question was simple, but the weight of it was crushing. Tom looked at the armor, then at her. He swallowed and answered with honesty. "Because it is beautiful," he said. "I wanted to know its story." The words hung in the air. Many nobles sneered, thinking it foolish. But others looked thoughtful. The Queen's eyes narrowed, not with anger but with curiosity. For the first time, her expression shifted. The silence grew deeper. The hall, the guards, the nobles, all waited for her judgment. The great hall was silent after Tom spoke. His words echoed in the space, and every alien eye stayed fixed on him. The nobles whispered among themselves, their voices sharp with anger and disbelief. Many could not accept that a human guest, small and fragile in their view, had dared to touch what even the bravest among them feared. The Queen stood tall at the center, her crystal crown glowing under the light from above. Her silver skin reflected the shine of the sacred armor behind Tom. She looked at him with eyes that seemed to pierce through the heart. Her voice, when it came, shook the very walls. "You admit this freely," she said. Tom did not look away. He knew he had broken a rule unspoken yet sacred. But hiding would not save him now. His hands trembled slightly at his sides, but his voice remained steady. "Yes," he answered. "I touched it." The hall erupted. Nobles shouted, some raising their hands, demanding punishment. A tall counselor with golden robes stepped forward. His face was long and proud, his voice sharp as a blade. "This human must pay," he cried. "To touch the armor is to insult our ancestors. He has no right to stand in this hall. He should be removed at once." Others joined him, their voices mixing in anger. The noise grew loud, bouncing off the walls like thunder. Guards shifted uneasily, their weapons at the ready. Some looked toward the Queen, waiting for her command. But the Queen raised one hand, and at once the hall fell silent again. Her presence alone was enough to command obedience. She studied Tom for a long moment. Her expression did not reveal anger. Instead, her gaze was calm, thoughtful, as though she saw something the others did not. "You touched what none of my people dared," she said. "Do you know the weight of this act?" Tom hesitated, then shook his head. "I do not know its full meaning," he said honestly. "I only know it looked alive, as if it carried a story. I wanted to feel it." Some nobles scoffed at his words. To them, such a reason sounded foolish, childish even. But others remained silent, unsure. The queen's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in curiosity. "You speak without fear," she said. "Do you not realize that one word from me could end your life in this hall?" Tom swallowed hard, but he did not step back. His voice was quiet yet clear. "I realize it. But I do not want to hide from truth. I touched it. That is all I can say." The nobles gasped again. The courage of the human confused them. Most aliens in the hall would have begged for mercy or thrown blame elsewhere. Yet Tom stood, admitting his action without excuse. The queen turned, her long robe flowing behind her as she stepped toward the sacred armor. She looked at it for a moment, her fingers brushing lightly against its surface. Unlike Tom, when she touched it the runes glowed faintly, as if alive under her hand. She then faced the hall once more. "Since the time of the first warrior, this armor has been a symbol," she declared. Her voice rose, filling every corner. "It is not only a weapon. It carries the memory of our unity, our courage, and our survival. To touch it is not forbidden by law, but it is avoided out of respect. None dared to do it, for none wished to test its power." Her gaze returned to Tom. "And yet, a human with no claim, no history, no bloodline among us, has touched it without hesitation. Why is this so?" The question hung in the air. No one answered. Nobles lowered their eyes. Guards stood frozen. Only Tom remained upright, meeting the queen's gaze. He could not explain beyond what he already had. Finally, the queen's voice softened, though it still carried weight. "Perhaps courage comes in forms we do not expect," she said. "Perhaps truth lies not in fear but in action." The hall murmured. Some nobles looked uneasy. Others shook their heads, unwilling to accept her words. But the queen silenced them with a glance. She turned again to Tom. "You will not be punished this day," she said. "Instead, you will be tested. If your reason is true, if your spirit is pure, then the armor itself will decide your worth." The hall stirred again. Whispers rose higher. The queen's words shocked them, for never had she spoken of testing a foreigner with the armor. The golden-robed counselor stepped forward again, anger burning in his eyes. "My queen, this is madness," he said. "How can a human be measured by the trial of the ancients? He is weak. He is unworthy. Our people will not accept such insult." The queen's gaze turned to him, sharp and commanding. "Our people will accept what truth demands," she said. Her tone left no space for argument. The counselor bowed his head, though his jaw tightened with rage. She looked back at Tom. "Prepare yourself. At the next dawn, you will stand before the trial sphere. It will show us if your courage is real or if your words are empty." Tom's chest tightened. He had no idea what the trial sphere was, but he understood it was no small challenge. Still, he bowed his head. "I will face it," he said. The queen nodded once. Her voice grew firm again, turning to address the entire hall. "Let it be known," she declared, "that this human will be tested by the will of the ancients. Until then, no harm shall come to him. He is under my protection." The hall fell silent. None dared to challenge her decree. The guards lowered their weapons. The nobles muttered, but their voices were weak. Tom stood quietly, his heart still pounding. He had survived the moment, but a greater test awaited him. The armor behind him glowed faintly, as if it had already chosen to watch him closely. And so the hall emptied slowly, nobles leaving with troubled faces, guards marching with heavy steps. The golden-robed counselor cast one last cold look at Tom before disappearing into the shadows. The queen remained for a while, her eyes on the armor, her mind unreadable. Tom looked at her, wondering if she saw him as a threat or as something else. When she finally turned to leave, her last words reached him like a whisper yet carried the weight of command. "Do not fear the trial, human. Fear only the truth it will reveal." With that, she left the hall, and the great doors closed behind her. Tom stood alone before the sacred armor, knowing his path was now bound to it in ways he did not yet understand. The night in the alien palace was quiet, but Tom could not rest. His room was wide, with walls that glowed faintly blue, and the ceiling showed the stars of the alien sky. Still, sleep did not come easily. His thoughts returned again and again to the Queen's words. At dawn, he would face the trial sphere. He walked to the balcony, looking over the city below. Towers of silver stone stretched to the horizon, glowing under the twin moons. Strange flying craft moved between them like birds of light. The beauty of it all could not calm him. His heart was heavy with questions. Why had he touched the armor? Why had he spoken the truth so freely, knowing the danger? He could not explain it even to himself. Something about the armor had pulled him, as if calling for his hand. And now, that small action had placed him in the center of a storm among people who barely trusted him. As dawn neared, guards arrived to take him to the Great Hall once more. They did not speak to him, but their glowing eyes watched his every step. Tom walked between them, his legs tense but steady. He knew fear could not help him now. The hall was crowded again. Nobles in golden and silver robes filled the sides, whispering as he passed. Many looked at him with anger, others with curiosity. The golden-robed counselor stood near the Queen's throne, his face cold and stern. At the center of the hall stood the trial sphere. It was a great orb of black crystal, larger than Tom himself, floating above the floor. Its surface glimmered with shifting lights, like stars trapped inside. Strange runes circled around it, moving as if alive. The Queen sat upon her throne, her crown shining bright. When Tom entered, her gaze turned to him. Her voice carried across the hall. "Human, step forward," she commanded. Tom obeyed. His footsteps echoed against the crystal floor. He stopped before the sphere, feeling its strange energy in the air. It was cold, yet it vibrated like a beating heart. The Queen raised her hand. "The trial sphere does not judge by words," she said. "It judges by truth of spirit. When you enter, it will show you your fear, your lies, and your courage. If you fail, you will be broken. If you succeed, the hall will know your worth." The nobles murmured. Some smiled, expecting his failure. Others leaned forward with interest. Tom looked at the sphere, then at the Queen. He bowed his head once. "I am ready." The Queen gestured, and the sphere opened. Its surface split like glass, revealing a doorway of light. A hum filled the air. Tom took a deep breath and stepped inside. The hall disappeared. Tom found himself standing in a vast emptiness. Darkness stretched in every direction, broken only by faint glimmers of light. He felt both heavy and weightless. A voice echoed, deep and endless, though it had no shape. "Human," it said. "Show us truth." Before him, the darkness shifted. Images appeared, sharp and real. He saw his home, Earth, the small town where he grew up. He saw his family, the friends he once knew. He felt the warmth of familiar places, but then the image twisted. Fire consumed the houses. His loved ones cried out, blaming him. You left us, they said. You chose another world over us. Tom's chest tightened. He wanted to deny it, but the truth stung. He had left Earth, searching for new answers among the stars. He could not change that. His voice trembled, but he spoke. I left because I needed to see more. It does not mean I forgot you. The voices faded, but another vision rose. Now he stood before alien warriors, their weapons aimed at him. They laughed, calling him weak, calling him useless. The golden-robed counselor's face appeared, sneering. You will never be more than a shadow, the voice said. You are not one of us. You do not belong. Fear pressed against him. His knees shook. But he lifted his head. Maybe I do not belong, he said. But I will stand anyway. Even if I am small, I will not lie about who I am. The vision cracked like glass, shattering around him. The darkness grew bright, and the sphere's voice spoke again. Truth remains. Tom felt warmth spread through his chest. The fear lessened, replaced by calm. Then the darkness faded completely, and he stood once more in the great hall. The sphere closed behind him with a deep hum. The hall was silent. Nobles stared, waiting for the result. The queen leaned forward, her eyes sharp. The sphere glowed, its runes shining bright. A beam of light struck Tom, covering him in a glow of silver and blue. The hall gasped. The sphere had accepted him. The queen rose from her throne. Her voice carried strength and wonder. The sphere has spoken, she declared. This human did not hide from fear. He did not bend under lies. His truth is his strength. The hall erupted in noise. Some shouted in anger, refusing to believe it. Others looked shaken, whispering to each other. The golden-robed counselor stepped forward, his voice filled with fury. This is a trick, he said. The sphere cannot accept a human. It must be false. But the queen silenced him with a single glance. The sphere does not lie, she said firmly. You may question me, but you cannot question the will of the ancients. Her words silenced him, though his eyes still burned with hatred. Tom stood quietly, still glowing faintly from the sphere's light. He felt weak but relieved. He had not been broken. He had spoken only what was true, and somehow, that had been enough. The queen's gaze returned to him. For the first time, her voice softened. You carry courage that is rare, even among my people, she said. The hall has seen it. Remember this moment, for it will decide your path. The nobles fell silent again, though the storm in their hearts was clear. Some bowed their heads, unwilling to fight the queen's words. Others clenched their fists, waiting for another chance to oppose him. Tom knew this was not the end. The trial sphere had shown his spirit, but the armor itself remained untouched by its true test. His path had only begun. The queen raised her voice one last time. The trial is complete. This human stands under the light of truth. Let none here deny it. The hall echoed with her command, and no one dared to speak against it. Tom stood tall, still glowing faintly, knowing that his life had changed again in ways he could not yet understand. The trial sphere had spoken, but the queen was not yet satisfied. The glow faded from Tom's body, and the whispers of the nobles slowly filled the great hall again. Some bowed their heads in silence, but others still glared at him with sharp eyes. The golden-robed counselor clenched his fists, his jaw tight with anger. The queen stepped down from her throne. Her crown caught the light as she moved, her presence filling the room with quiet power. She stood in front of Tom and looked into his eyes. The sphere has shown us your truth, she said. But truth alone is not enough. Courage must walk with action. Words and spirit are strong, but strength is proven by what you do when fear takes shape. Tom listened carefully. His chest still felt heavy from the visions inside the sphere, but he understood her meaning. She did not only want honesty. She wanted to see if he could act with it. The queen turned and raised her hand. Bring forth the trial of courage, she commanded. 2 guards left the hall and returned moments later, carrying a strange object. It was a cube of silver metal, glowing with shifting lights. When they placed it in the center of the hall, it unfolded with smooth movements, changing shape until it became a tall frame of crystal. At its heart appeared a swirling mist of light and shadow. Gasps rose from the nobles. Some looked eager, others concerned. The golden-robed counselor smiled thinly, as if waiting for Tom to fail. The queen lifted her voice. This is the trial of courage. Inside this frame, illusions take form. They will not harm your body, but they will test your mind, your fear, and your will. If you falter, the hall will see it. If you stand, the hall will also see it. Are you ready, human? Tom's throat was dry, but he nodded. I am ready. The queen gestured, and the mist within the frame grew brighter. A hum filled the air, deep and strong. Tom stepped forward. He paused once, looking at the faces around him. Some were cold, some curious, some doubtful. Then he walked into the mist. At once, the great hall vanished. Tom found himself standing on a battlefield. The sky was black, lit by fire and smoke. The ground shook under his feet. All around him, alien warriors clashed with creatures of shadow, their cries sharp in the air. The armor of the queen's people glowed faintly as they fought, but many were falling. A voice called out. Human, help us. Do not run. Stand with us. Tom looked down and saw a staff lying on the ground, made of crystal and metal. It was the only weapon near him. He picked it up, feeling its weight. His arms shook, but he tightened his grip. One of the shadow creatures turned toward him. Its body was tall and twisted, its eyes burning red. It rushed forward, claws raised. Tom's heart pounded. Every instinct told him to run, but he forced his feet to stay. He lifted the staff and struck with all his strength. The creature shattered into smoke. More shadows came, surrounding him. Tom swung again and again, striking with speed and desperation. He was not trained in their ways, but he used his human instinct, moving fast, dodging, and striking where he could. Every time he stood his ground, the staff glowed brighter, as if feeding on his will. The battlefield shook, and a louder voice filled the air. Will you fight when you are alone? Or will you fall? The shadows cleared, and Tom saw himself now standing in the great hall once again. But it was not the real hall. This was part of the test. The nobles stood before him, their faces twisted with scorn. They shouted at him, called him weak, called him a thief, called him unworthy. Their voices rang like thunder. The golden-robed counselor stepped forward, pointing at him. You do not belong, the vision of the counselor said. You are nothing. Tom felt the weight of their words pressing against him, heavier than any battle. His legs trembled, his breath quickened. For a moment, he wanted to fall, to give in, to admit they were right. But he remembered the armor, shining in the hall. He remembered the queen's eyes, curious instead of hateful. He remembered why he had spoken the truth from the beginning. He lifted his voice. I am human. I may be small, I may be weak in your eyes, but I will not hide. I will stand, because I choose to stand. The vision shattered. The voices broke into silence. The mist faded. Tom opened his eyes and found himself once more in the real Great Hall. The frame of crystal dimmed, folding back into the silver cube. His hands still gripped the staff tightly, though now it was gone, nothing more than part of the trial. The hall was silent. Every noble, every guard, every eye was upon him. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, sweat on his brow. But he was standing, unbroken. The Queen's eyes shone as she looked at him. She raised her voice for all to hear. The trial of courage has ended. The human stood against fear. He did not flee, he did not bow. He faced it with truth in his heart. The hall has seen it. Some nobles bowed their heads in respect, though many others clenched their teeth in anger. The golden-robed counselor stepped forward again, his voice sharp. "This proves nothing," he said. "Illusions are not real. Let him face a real test, against living strength." The Queen's gaze turned to him, sharp as a blade. "Do you challenge my judgment?" she asked. The counselor hesitated but did not lower his eyes. "I challenge the human," he said boldly. "If he claims courage, let him face me in a duel before the hall." Gasps echoed through the chamber. A duel was no small thing. It was a contest of skill and spirit, watched by all. To suggest such against a human guest was nearly unthinkable, yet the counselor's pride pushed him forward. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to Tom. "The counselor calls for a duel," she said. "You may refuse. No shame will fall if you choose not to fight." Tom looked around. He saw the sneering face of the counselor, the doubtful eyes of the nobles, the glowing armor on the pedestal. He felt the weight of the choice. His voice was steady. "I will fight." The hall erupted once more, half in shock, half in excitement. The Queen raised her hand, silencing them all. Her voice rang strong. "Then it is decided. The duel will be held at sunset. Until then, the human will rest. At sunset, he will face the counselor before us all." Tom bowed his head. His chest was tight, but his spirit was firm. The trials had tested his mind. Now he would face the strength of another in the open hall. The Queen returned to her throne, her face calm but her eyes bright with interest. The nobles whispered again, their voices buzzing like a storm. Tom stood quietly, knowing the next test would be harder than all before. The sun of the alien world moved slowly across the sky. Its golden light poured into the great hall, giving the sacred armor a glow that caught every eye. The hall was filled again, nobles crowding the sides, guards standing tall with their weapons, and the Queen seated upon her throne. Tom stood near the center, his hands folded behind his back. His body still carried the weight of the earlier trials, but his spirit was steady. At sunset, he would face the golden-robed counselor in a duel. Until then, the Queen had called for silence and for the story of the armor to be spoken. The Queen rose from her throne. Her crown shone with light, and her presence filled the chamber. She lifted one hand toward the armor. "This is not only a relic," she began. Her voice was clear, each word carrying power. "This armor was once worn by the first warrior, the one who ended the wars of our people. Long ago, our clans fought without end. Villages burned, families were torn apart, and unity was unknown. Then came the warrior, who stood alone when all others fled. His courage was greater than his strength, and his words carried truth that no sword could cut. With this armor, he defended the weak and challenged the strongest. In time, he brought the clans together. He gave us peace. The hall listened with quiet respect. Even those who disliked Tom did not dare speak during this telling. The queen continued. When the warrior fell, he said the armor must never be worn lightly. He commanded that it should rest until another showed the same courage he once held. Since then, it has stood in this hall. None have touched it, for none wished to fail before its memory. Her eyes moved to Tom. Yet this human touched it without fear. And when he did, the runes glowed. They did not glow when any of us came near. They glowed only for him. Gasps spread through the hall again. Tom felt his chest tighten. He had seen the faint light, but hearing it from the queen's lips made the moment heavier. The golden-robed counselor stepped forward, his voice sharp. It means nothing. A trick of light, nothing more. Do not twist legend to defend him. The queen's eyes turned on him, calm yet unshakable. You question not me but the armor itself. Be careful, counselor. Some truths are older than your pride. The counselor fell silent, though his anger burned clear in his eyes. The queen returned her gaze to Tom. Step forward, she commanded. Tom obeyed, walking until he stood before the armor once more. He could feel the eyes of every noble, every guard, pressing against his back. The armor towered above him, shining as if alive. Place your hand on it again, the queen said. Let the hall see what I have seen. Tom swallowed, then raised his hand. He pressed it against the silver chest plate. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the runes lit up, glowing blue and silver. The glow spread across the armor, flowing from chest to gauntlets to helmet. The hall gasped louder than ever before. Nobles leaned forward, their eyes wide. Even some guards whispered in awe. The golden-robed counselor stepped back, his face pale with shock. The queen raised her voice. The armor responds. It does not awaken for lies. It does not shine for weakness. It shines only for courage. Tom pulled his hand away, and the glow slowly faded. He stepped back, his heart racing. He had not planned this, had not expected it, yet it had happened. The queen turned to the nobles. This is the proof. The first warrior spoke of a time when another would rise, not from our blood, not from our clans, but from beyond. He said courage knows no shape, no face, no world. It only knows truth. Her words sent a wave of murmurs across the hall. Some nobles shook their heads, refusing to believe. Others looked thoughtful, their anger softening into doubt. The counselor, however, could not stay silent. He shouted, his voice echoing. This is a mistake. You put faith in a stranger while your own people are strong. Do not let legend blind you. Test him with real steel, and you will see he is nothing. The queen's eyes grew sharp. You already called for a duel, counselor. At sunset, your wish will be granted. Until then, keep your tongue. The counselor bowed stiffly, his face dark with rage. Tom stood silently, his mind heavy with what had just happened. The armor glowing under his touch felt unreal. He did not feel chosen, nor strong, only confused. Why him? Why not one of the queen's own people? The queen seemed to sense his thoughts. She stepped closer and spoke in a voice lower than before, so only he could hear. Do not question too much, human. The armor chose to answer. That is enough. What matters is not why, but what you will do with this moment. Tom nodded slowly. He did not know if he was worthy of such a thing, but he could not deny what had happened. The queen returned to her throne, and the hall remained restless with whispers. Some nobles avoided Tom's eyes, while others studied him with strange curiosity. Hours passed as the sun lowered in the sky. The hall grew darker, the glow of the armor the brightest light. At last, the queen rose again. "Prepare the circle," she commanded. Guards moved quickly, clearing the center of the hall. They marked a wide ring with lines of glowing crystal. Inside this circle, the duel would take place. Weapons were brought forward, simple staffs and blades, equal in weight and length. The queen's voice rang out. "At sunset, the human and the counselor will face each other. No blood shall be demanded, only proof of courage and strength. The duel will end when one can no longer stand or no longer choose to fight." The nobles leaned forward, eager to watch. Some whispered wagers, others argued over what would happen. Most believed Tom would fall quickly. A few, remembering the glow of the armor, were not so sure. Tom stood at the edge of the circle, his chest tight but his spirit ready. He had faced the sphere, he had faced the trial of courage, and now he would face a living foe. The queen looked down from her throne, her voice steady. "The duel begins at the last light of the sun. Until then, rest your mind, human." The hall has already seen what many refused to believe. At sunset, they will see more. The nobles murmured, the counselor tightened his grip on his staff, and the armor stood silent, its runes glowing faintly once again. And as the light of the sun began to fade, the true test waited. The sun was falling behind the tall towers of the alien city. Golden light entered the great hall through the wide crystal windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. The circle for the duel had already been drawn, glowing softly as if waiting for the clash to begin. Nobles filled the balconies, whispering to one another, their voices like waves of restless water. Guards stood at attention, their eyes sharp, their hands on weapons, though none dared interfere. Tom stood at one end of the circle, his hand gripping a simple staff made of hardened wood. His heart beat fast, but his face showed calm. He had already decided there was no escape. The counselor had challenged him, and the queen had allowed the duel. Running would mean shame, not only for him but also for the queen who had shown him respect. He could not let that happen. On the other end of the circle, the golden-robed counselor stepped forward. He had removed his robe, revealing strong arms covered in marks of battle. His eyes burned with pride and anger. In his hand, he held his own staff, heavier and longer than Tom's. The counselor struck the floor once, sending a loud echo through the hall. The queen rose from her throne. Her voice carried across the chamber. "The rules are clear. The duel will end when one fighter cannot stand or no longer wishes to fight. No death is demanded. This is a trial of skill and courage, not hatred." Both fighters bowed their heads to her words. The queen raised her hand. "Begin." The hall grew silent. Not even a breath could be heard. The counselor moved first, stepping quickly into the circle with strong strikes of his staff. He swung at Tom's side with the force of a storm. Tom lifted his own staff, blocking the blow, though the impact shook his arms. He stepped back, steadying himself, his eyes locked on the counselor. Another strike came, faster this time, aimed at Tom's head. Tom ducked low, feeling the rush of air as the staff passed over him. He rolled to the side and rose to his feet, breathing hard but still calm. The counselor laughed, a sound of mockery. "You defend well, human, but defense will not save you." Tom did not answer. He knew words would not help here. Only actions mattered. He kept his staff ready, waiting for the next move. The counselor rushed forward, swinging again and again, his strikes like thunder. Tom blocked what he could, dodged when he must, and used his lighter frame to stay just out of reach. Still, each strike pushed him closer to the edge of the circle. The nobles watched with excitement. Some shouted for the counselor, others for Tom. Whispers spread quickly. Some said the human would fall soon, others said he had more strength than expected. The queen remained silent, her eyes fixed on every movement. The counselor, seeing Tom close to the edge, smiled with triumph. He lifted his staff high for a final strike meant to end the duel. But Tom did not back away. Instead, he stepped forward, closer than the counselor expected. The heavy staff came down, but Tom's quick hands pushed it aside, and with his other end of the staff, he struck the counselor across the chest. The hall gasped. The counselor stumbled back, his pride wounded more than his body. His eyes widened with surprise. He had not expected such a move from a human. Tom held his staff firm. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but his eyes stayed focused. He had found a way to fight not with strength alone, but with timing, speed, and courage. The counselor growled and rushed again, but now Tom was ready. He did not wait for each strike. Instead, he began to move in patterns, using circles, stepping lightly, letting the counselor waste his energy with heavy blows. Each time, Tom struck back with small but sharp attacks to the arms and legs. The crowd began to shift. The early cheers for the counselor grew quieter, while voices calling for Tom grew stronger. They saw not just a human fighting but a fighter with heart, one who refused to give up even when the odds were against him. The counselor's attacks slowed as his arms grew tired. Sweat covered his forehead, and anger burned in his face. He lifted his staff once more, aiming to end it with one last attack. Tom saw the chance. As the staff came down, he stepped inside again, closer than the counselor wanted. With both hands, he struck across the counselor's knees, sending him crashing to the ground. Before the counselor could rise, Tom pointed the end of his staff at his chest. The hall fell silent. The queen stood. Her voice was firm and powerful. "The duel is over." The counselor looked up, his pride broken. He wanted to stand, to fight again, but his body refused. He lowered his eyes, defeated. Tom stepped back, lowering his staff, showing respect. He did not smile, did not mock. He only breathed hard, his body trembling with exhaustion. The queen looked at Tom, her face calm but her eyes shining with something rare pride. "You have faced strength with courage. You have faced anger with patience. You have faced doubt with truth. The hall has seen, and the hall must remember." The nobles bowed their heads, some reluctantly, others with true respect. Even those who hated the idea of a human being honored could not deny what they had just witnessed. The queen turned to the defeated counselor. "You challenged, and you were answered. Let this end now. Pride should not blind you again." The counselor nodded, though his face showed deep shame. Guards helped him rise and led him away. Tom remained in the circle, breathing deeply, his staff still in hand. The whispers of the crowd filled the hall once more. Many eyes that once looked on him with disdain now carried respect, though some still burned with doubt. The queen raised her voice again. "The duel has ended, but the story has only begun. The armor has chosen, the trial has spoken, and courage has been proven. Tomorrow, the path will grow heavier. Let all prepare." The hall echoed with her words. The nobles left slowly, still speaking in low voices. The guards returned to their posts. The queen stayed seated on her throne, watching Tom with thoughtful eyes. Tom finally lowered his staff. His body was weak, but his spirit was strong. He had survived another test. He did not know what the future would hold, but he knew he could no longer turn back. The rising conflict was not finished. It was only beginning. The great hall was quiet as dawn approached. Tom stood near the sacred armor, still recovering from the duel with the golden-robed counselor. His body ached, and his arms were heavy, but his mind was clear. The trials had tested his courage, strength, and heart. Now, the final challenge awaited him, the Queen's true test. The Queen entered the hall, her crown glowing softly in the early light. She moved with a grace that made the hall feel alive. Every noble, every guard, every visitor straightened at her presence. The sacred armor behind Tom seemed to hum faintly, as if aware that the moment had grown near. "Human," the Queen said, her voice carrying across the chamber, "you have faced the trial sphere. You have faced the trial of courage. You have stood in the duel and shown your strength. Yet there remains one question: are you ready to speak the voice that will unite all who dwell here?" Tom looked at her, unsure. His voice? He had not expected words to be part of this. But the Queen's eyes did not leave him, her gaze calm and patient, yet firm. I will try," he said. The Queen nodded. "Step forward." He moved toward the center of the hall, feeling the eyes of the crowd press against him. The nobles whispered among themselves, some skeptical, others curious. The golden-robed counselor sat silently in a corner, still smarting from defeat but watching with sharp interest. The Queen lifted her hand, and the sacred armor's runes glowed. A soft light spread across the hall. "The armor has chosen to speak," she said. "Only the one who has proven courage and truth may speak through it. Step closer." Tom's heart pounded. He approached the pedestal, his hand hovering just above the chest plate. The light intensified, warm and gentle, yet filled with power. The hall seemed to hold its breath. "Place your hand on the armor," the Queen instructed. Tom obeyed. The instant his hand touched the cool metal, he felt a surge of energy flow through him. Images and sounds filled his mind: battles, leaders, warriors, and creatures he had never seen before. He felt their struggles, their fear, their hope. A voice spoke not with words, but with feeling. It was the voice of the first warrior, the one who had once worn the armor. It carried pride, courage, and a demand for justice. "Do you accept this responsibility?" the voice asked in his mind. Tom's chest tightened. He thought of the Queen, of the hall, of the nobles, and even of his own people far across the stars. He understood the choice. "I accept," he thought firmly. The hall fell into perfect silence. Every being present could feel the moment. Tom's voice, strengthened by the power of the armor, rose. Not in sound at first, but in feeling. The runes glowed brighter, flowing over the armor and across the floor in waves of silver and blue. When he finally spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the hall. "We are stronger when we stand together. Fear and doubt divide us, but courage and truth unite us. Let no pride or hatred break the bond of those who choose to protect and honor life. Let all who follow this path be guided by courage, truth, and respect." The hall was stunned. Nobles froze, their mouths open, unable to interrupt the words. The counselor's eyes widened, though his body remained still. The guards lowered their weapons slightly, and the runes on the armor pulsed with each word, as if agreeing. The Queen rose from her throne, her eyes shining. "The human speaks the voice of the ancients. The armor has chosen well. You have proven yourself worthy, not by blood or by birth, but by courage and truth. The nobles slowly began to bow their heads, some with hesitation, others with genuine respect. The counselor stepped forward, his face pale, but he spoke. I see now. I misjudged him. Courage is not measured by strength alone. Tom lowered his hand from the armor, feeling the warmth fade. He took a deep breath. He had faced visions, illusions, and a duel, yet this moment was heavier than all the rest. He had not only survived the trials but had spoken the words that could guide an entire people. The Queen walked to him and placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. You have done more than any of us expected. Your courage and truth have touched us all. From this day forward, you will be a voice among us, a bridge between worlds. Tom felt a deep sense of honor, yet also responsibility. He looked at the hall, at the glowing armor, at the nobles and guards. He understood that his actions would matter beyond this hall, beyond this world, even beyond his own life. The golden-robed counselor bowed deeply before him. I offer my respect and service. You have earned it. The other nobles followed, some slowly, some quickly, but all acknowledging what had been proven. The Queen returned to her throne, her voice calm yet full of power. Let it be written in memory and story, a human of courage and truth has touched the armor of the ancients. He has spoken the voice that unites. May all who hear it remember the strength found in honesty and bravery. The hall echoed with her words, the sound carrying through every corner, reaching even the high balconies. Tom stood quietly, feeling the weight and honor of the moment. He had entered the palace as a guest, small and uncertain, and now he had left a mark that would last generations. As the light of the twin suns rose, casting long beams across the hall, the armor's glow dimmed slightly, resting once more in silence. Yet the memory of its glow and the voice it had shared remained. The Queen smiled faintly at Tom. Your path is not finished. Challenges will come, decisions will test you further, but never forget, courage and truth are always stronger than fear. Tom nodded. He knew that trials awaited, yet for the first time, he felt ready. He had found courage in himself, and he had proven that even one human could stand among the greatest of alien warriors. The nobles slowly departed, leaving the hall quiet. Guards walked beside Tom as he moved back from the armor, but no one spoke. All had witnessed something extraordinary. The Queen's voice carried one final message. Go forth, human. The hall and the world watch you now. Speak only with truth, act only with courage, and the path will always find you. Tom bowed his head. He had begun as a visitor, uncertain and small. Now he had become more a symbol, a voice, a bridge between worlds. The trials had ended, yet his journey was only beginning. The great hall held its silence for a moment longer, then life returned, though the memory of what had occurred would echo forever. Tom walked out of the circle, his steps steady, his heart filled with purpose. The armor stood silent, yet its runes glimmered faintly, as if watching and remembering. The human had answered its call. The hall had witnessed courage, truth, and a voice that could unite even the stars.